So I have like a lot of trouble sleeping outside when I go backpacking, and it's not because I'm afraid of bears or anything like that. It's just I have trouble getting comfortable, and I've tried a lot of sleeping pads over the years to see if I could fix it. So I'll look at my collection with you guys and share my thoughts on the different kind of sleeping pads, and maybe it'll be useful for some of you, maybe not. Self-inflating Thermarest. If you've been hiking and camping for more than 10 years, you most likely started on a green Thermarest at some point, or you have slept on one of them. This is a newer type of model. I've had it for over 10 years. It's still actually one of my favorite sleeping pads. It's pretty light. It's just around 10 ounces or maybe 300 and something grams. I'm not sure. I like using that one paired up with either like a small piece of foam for like my legs. That's just a torso length. But overall, that kind of pad to me actually strikes this balance between some comfort, pretty good warmth. It's really packable. It doesn't weigh that much, and it's actually quite fast to inflate. So it's so small that it just takes a couple of breaths. It's ready to go. It's no big deal. The Z-lite by Thermarest. This is a super popular pad. I don't know if it's my original one because I think I've had more than one of these. This is just the one I have right now. I cut it down to a semi torso length, so it's just it's pretty much the same size as the Prolite small. Those are cheap. They're kind of more comfortable than a normal closed cell foam pad. They definitely pack down smaller. The reason they pack down smaller is because they fold and because the foam is really thin. I don't know how thick it is. It's really thin. You're supposed to be getting a little bit of insulation from the fact that there's that sort of egg carton pattern to it. Honestly, they're great because they pack up so quickly, but I've had a lot of times where those the little eggshell pattern fills with condensation, and you can get a fair amount of condensation in there if you're sleeping on cold ground, and it soaks your sleeping bag. It's really not my favorite. Closed cell foam pad. This is a super thin evazote model that I buy from Mountain Equipment Co-op here in Canada. It's 5 millimeters thick, or 1/8 of an inch. This is a newer one that I just got recently because my old one got melted on a baseboard heater, but they are super durable. This is actually one of my favorite pads. It is super thin. It's a little bit thicker than the Gossamer gear Thinllight that I'm going to talk about. They're really durable. There's something about how they make them. I don't know what company actually makes this, but they are really, really durable. They weigh around 6 ounces or 300 grams. Honestly, not the most comfortable thing in the world, but if you're on soft ground, it actually does a pretty good job. And I just like the fact that they are so cheap. It's like $25 Canadian. I don't know. It's ridiculous. It costs next to nothing. The Gossamer gear Thinllight. This one also has a little bit of a cult following to it. It's dirt cheap, so it's the kind of thing that I figured may as well try. I prefer the Mountain Equipment Co-op bivy, the evazote, the bivy one. This is definitely lighter, but the foam itself is more fragile, so I've put my thumb through it, just sort of like pulling it out of my bag. There's really nothing to it, so it doesn't give you any comfort. It because it's foam, it gives you more insulation than you'd be expecting. But if you've got to sleep in a shelter or something where it's hard, this is gonna make for a pretty unpleasant night, just like the Mountain Equipment evazote pad. Thermarest Neoair Xlite, the original. There's not a whole lot of bad things to say about these technically. They have a really good track record. They're surprisingly durable. They have the little crinkle sound that everyone talks about, which isn't, I don't really find the end of the world once you get to sleep on them. My main issue with this model than anything else, I have two issues with this model. First is that it's always this mummy style. I mean, I don't get that. I'd rather a big rectangle. And the other thing is that just the design of it, you have to blow it up by mouth, and it's pretty annoying. Like at the end of the day, if you're really tired, you just want to get to bed, and then you've got to sort of like blow this thing up. It takes a lot of air. It's a lot of work. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's not my favorite thing. They definitely pack down super small. That one's actually pretty warm. I've heard the Xtherm is crazy warm. I think it would be like an amazing option, especially if it came in a rectangular shape. The newer models have a different valve that you can actually clip on an inflation bag, a lot like the Nemo Tensor that I have. So this is the Nemo Tensor uninsulated. I don't know how I feel about this pad, honestly. I've slept on it a few times, just a handful of times. Has zero crinkle compared to the Thermarest Neoair. It's pretty comfortable, but it's super cold, and I mean frigid. It doesn't, if it's anywhere below 50 degrees Fahrenheit or like borderline 10 degrees Celsius, you feel it, and it's really not cool. So I pretty much regret not getting the insulated version of that one, because the weight penalty is really negligible. It's similar to me. I'm sure it's the insulated one is really comparable, or I think it's called the Alpine model, or I'm not quite sure what the model is, but I think it's definitely a comfortable pad. I'm always super freaked out about relying so much on something that's purely inflated, because the moment you get a hole in that, you've got nothing. So your mileage may vary. The Thermarest Ridgerest. This is like, I don't know how long they've been making these for. This is my go-to winter pad. And the reason why I think that this is such a great winter pad is first of all, it's huge. This is the long wide model, or just around 6'3", and that's what I am. So it's perfect lengthwise. It's really wide. I think it's 25 inches wide. It's the same size as the long wide Tensor. I really like having a closed cell foam pad in the winter for a bunch of reasons. And one of those is that when you set up your shelter, the first thing that you got to do is get in there and start to sort of take your boots off, etc. And with a closed cell foam pad, you just roll it out and you've got some insulation there. Now, this is not the highest R value. You can get away with it at pretty low temperatures. I've brought this one down to like -15 Celsius, and it's pretty good. There's something different between foam, pure closed cell foam, and inflatable pads. So you can't compare a closed cell foam pad that has an R value of 2 and an inflatable pad that has an R value of 2. There's just something different about it. So this one, the closed cell foam definitely insulates you from the ground. You don't get that sort of warm feeling, but it insulates you. It doesn't give you really any comfort. It just keeps you from being cold. So I think that for the winter versus 3 season, Something like the Ridgerest is a really good option to have with you all the time. I have it strapped to the outside of my pack. It has its own sort of strap, so I can take it off the pack. It stays rolled up, and I can use it as a seat right away. No issues. It doesn't retain any moisture or anything like that. And then supplementing it with some kind of other pad that gives you a little bit more warmth and some comfort. So, right now my go-to for that is the Thermarest Prolite. It just gives you that comfort around your torso. It gives you that little extra warmth, and it works for me. So, I think there's pros and cons to all of them. The weight is definitely an issue for the Nemo. The air mattresses are going to be the ones that push the weight quite a bit. The Tensor that I have is around 20 ounces, so a wide tall. With the insulated models, it's going to be a little bit heavier. Same thing for the Neoairs. They're going to be the ones that are the large talls, which are what I need, are going to be right around the 20 ounces. The Xlite that I have is right around a pound. The Ridgerest is a little bit over a pound, but again, for the winter, I really think that margin of safety that you get from the foam pad is pretty important. Again, it's hard to say that. It's hard to imagine that you're going to end up with a 10-pound base weight in the winter. It's just not going to happen. You have to have more insulation, and that layer on the ground is so important. This one's a joke. It's like 15 pounds. But it's really comfortable.